The last male white rhino died. You may recall hearing about that in the news. Last month, there are no more. Efforts continue through modern technology to try to save that subspecies, but we don't know whether that will be successful or not. God gave us our chance with the white rhino. Some of you will recall this powerful phrase that Dr. King used in several of his speeches. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. What a deep conviction that conveys. And he took that phrase, as many others have over time, from a pre-Civil War abolitionist, a Unitarian pastor from Massachusetts, where else? Reverend Theodore Parker. And I want you to see the context in which Reverend Parker used this in one of his sermons against the practice of chattel slavery. He said, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one," and I love this phrase, "my eye reaches but a little ways." Isn't that gorgeous? 19th century language. "I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure," which would be what? What is the figure of a curve? A circle, right? A curve is always part of a circle, which represents wholeness, completeness. "I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. But from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice." Isn't that beautiful? I love this phrase. I can. Maybe I can't see the whole, but I get the arc, and I can divine that by conscience. Conscience is that which we humans believe so far is unique to us. That ability to discern morality, and by biblical standard, the responsibility among all God's creatures to reflect morality. So both of those men shared the concept that in the universe there is a characteristic of moral curvature, right? That something begins and somewhere it ends, but it all holds justice together. And it was Mr. Einstein, of course, who actually proved that was true in physical fact. The universe is, in fact, curved. Here's a lovely quote from Mr. Einstein. "Nothing that I can do will change the structure of the universe," which he helped us see, in quotes, for the first time. "But maybe by raising my voice, I can help in the greatest of all causes, goodwill among men and women and peace on earth." Well, they weren't the only ones thinking along those curved lines. We lost Stephen Hawking this year, this past month as well, but not before he helped us understand, or begin to understand, that space was never what we always thought it always was. Emptiness, dotted with solar systems here and there, and nebulae, and black holes and things like that. Stephen Hawking helped us begin to understand that space is something. It's not emptiness at all. It's not a philosophical idea. It is a something. And the something appears to be things we don't really understand yet in that vastness. But we know they're there. And what we've learned with the help of Stephen Hawking is that the things that we call things This, you, me, the molecules, right? All through that vast universe is what we call matter. That's only 5% of what is. Think about that. Get your head around that. Dark matter is 22%, and this thing we call dark energy is 78%. The vast majority of what is, we have no idea what it is and where it is. They just call them these, and your new best friend in astrophysics, Neil deGrasse Tyson, has helped us understand that we don't know what we're talking about yet. We just know that we have found evidence for dark energy and dark matter, and so we call it that. But what we know is that there is no emptiness anywhere in this universe. There's no separation. There's no disconnect of anything from anything. Isn't that amazing? Think of what that does to the human conscience, or what it could do, might do. To shift from thinking, oh, things are separated and individualized, to no, that's just a misperception. I like to encourage you to think of the universe as jello, right? Instead of empty, think of it as this giant something of jello, where nothing is separated from anything else. Imagine that. And imagine if this scientific information could just influence our spiritual and moral formation, so that we began acting as though everything is connected to everything. Can you imagine that? How our world might change if we lived with that understanding. And we all kind of came around, and I mean around, to Dr. King and Theodore Parker's way of thinking of morality, as everything is connected to everything. Then I think we might need to begin connecting dots. Why is it, if everything is connected to everything, why is it that some human beings over here think it's nobody's business if we want to frack over there and pull oil out from over there and dump wastewater over here, that it's no business of anybody on the other side of the planet, or the other side of the tracks, for that matter? How can we continue thinking like that? And so we need to connect the dots. If it's all curved, we need to see that as being connected. Remember, I shared our social principles, one of them with you, about the world. And the first phrase is, God's world is one world. That's our belief. It's physical fact, it's moral understanding, but it's also a theological doctrine for us. God's world, first, whose is it? Not ours. God's world is one world. One world. And so we need to start connecting dots between the First Nations in British Columbia, who are fighting against the laying of a pipeline through their sacred homelands, and the slaughter of uncontacted Javari tribes in the Brazilian jungles where it borders Peru. These are people who have not encountered the modern world yet, and they are being murdered. And then for the resources of their lands. There's dots that connect them to our desire to put however much gas we want in our gas-guzzling vehicle, so we can take it anywhere we want, as often as we want, as we feel like it, right? And that's connecting dots to the melting of the ice in the Arctic. And that connects with dots to oil spills anywhere on this planet. And that connects with dots to earthquakes in Oklahoma, Archie. They didn't used to happen anymore. Look at California and look at Oklahoma. Who knows why? Yes, it's related to fracking. It's not directly caused by fracking, but it's part of the practice of fracking. Isn't that shocking to see that map? Watch for Pennsylvania. It's going to start up there. And a whole lot of our congregation has moved to Pennsylvania to be part of the fracking industry, of oil and gas industry, because there's jobs there that they can't find here. It gets complicated when we start connecting these dots. So Centennial, where do we have dots to connect if we're going to build beloved community right here? Right here. I want you to think about that. Help one another think about that. What are the dots we need to be connecting from right here throughout this world that's curved? Because we can certainly go all the way around the world from here with these dots, that everything is connected to everything else. Here's one thing that comes to my mind. Did you know that the Sacramento River is filled with refuse every winter, these last couple of winters? Every time the level of the river rises and floats out all of the refuse from the unsheltered people who build their encampments on the side of the river. How does that dot connect with us and the building of a fence so they won't camp here? Ooh, these dots hit close to home, don't they? Of course they do. It's Jell-O. Everything's connected to everything. Let me invite you to be spiritually, morally reflective with me and inquisitive and unafraid to see how we might be called to change, because we are those who the book of Genesis tells us our job as creatures, among other creatures, is to reflect the Creator back to the creation. The Creator, not our will, the Creator. How will we do that? It seems like connecting dots isn't the child's play we once thought it was. So as we reflect on our giving this morning, let's remember that that's one way in United Methodism that we do intentionally connect dots between people who occupy this building and people who have no buildings at all to share all over the world, people who have needs far greater than our own. I invite you to be generous as God has been so generous with us.